ملائكته يصلون على النبي
حق
يا
نبي
أيها الذين آمنوا صلوا عليه وسلموا تسليما
اللهم صل على
اللهم صل على سيدنا ومولانا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا ومولانا محمد. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has blessed us here to come to this beautiful mahfil in which we do the dhikr of Hazrat Ali. And we don't often think about how big of a deal this is because we're so used to that thing, right? There's a lot of times when you have a certain ni'mah, right? It could be any ni'mah, you don't understand the value of that thing, right? And one of the most beautiful things about these mahfils is that you see that when Hazrat Ali's name is mentioned, you see the love that comes on the expression of people's faces, right? You see that when they talk about Hazrat Ali, when it could be the same story over and over again. 1,000 times you will hear the story of what happened in K.A.W, right? You will hear that, but that same expression, you will have that excitement like a child is listening to that same story over and over again. This is what? This is a quality of someone that is a believer. That Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, لا يحب عليا منافق, that no munafiq will love Ali, ولا يبغضه مؤمن, that no believer will hate him, right? And to understand this thing, this is a matter of purity, right? This nifaq that lives in the hearts of people, why is it there? It's a trap from shaitan. Because what he wants you to do is he wants you to make the same mistake that he made. And that was not that he did it, he accepted Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? You remember all the sajdas he did, all of the ibadat that he did, we hear about this, we read about this, right? So where did he mess up? When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put a person in front of him and he said, no, I don't accept this person. And that is the same mistake that people make today. That the person that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put in front of them, they reject that person in some way, form, or fashion. Now think about this. There are many people that don't even believe in Allah, right? They're like atheists or whatever. And what do? They still get their things, right? Allah still gives them their rizq, Allah still gives them water, it still rains on them. They have all those things. Now take it to a higher level. Now there's those people that believe in Allah, but they associate partners with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Does Allah not listen to their du'as? Does Allah not cure them when they're sick? He does, right? Now you come to a higher thing. Then there are those people that believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? They believe in the oneness of Allah, right? But what happens is, when it comes to the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they don't have that understanding or that fahm or that love and that adab of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that's supposed to be there. We can never understand his maqam, right? It doesn't matter how much love you have, it will always be less. Why? Because he's Habibullah. There is no way you can outlove the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam compared to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It's impossible, right? And then there are those people, right, that they love the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They have adab of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But then what happens is when you mention the name of Hazrat Ali in front of them, what happens? They either become confused or they say, this is not for us, right? They say, why are you mentioning his name? This goes back to that hadith, that means there is some problem in that person's heart. There is some nifaq in that person's heart if he has anything in his heart against Hazrat Ali. Because a true lover of Hazrat Ali, of Maula Ali, will love to come to that mahfil where Hazrat Ali's name is mentioned. Because the zikr of Hazrat Ali is an ibadah. We believe that, no doubt. Right? The more you do Ali, you could do it all day. That is an ibadah. But there are those people that deny that. Right? And then there are those people that when we say, okay, so the ayah that I said in the beginning was, we all know this. إِيَّاكَ نَعْبُدُ وَإِيَّاكَ نَسْتَعِينُ. Right? That, oh Allah, we beseech you, we only worship you, and we only beseech you for help. So like a lot of the nas that we read, right? The ones that we heard, what did we say? Hazrat Ali, Maula Mushkil Kusha. Okay, Ya Ali Madad. What is that then? How do these two things come together then? How do these two things come together? But they sound different. right? This is where the people that don't have that adab of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that Khariji mentality, right? This is where they come and say, look, why are you going somewhere else when you can go straight to Allah? Right? This is where, the people that do believe in Hazrat Ali, that believe in Nabi Kareem sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in that way, this is where they kind of get confused, right? And what's the reason for that? Is because we don't have this fahm that's inside, this understanding. It's a very simple thing too. And it's very simple, and it's always like this. You always have to remember that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one that bestows to Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And then from there, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gives it to whoever he wants. Right? For example, and so when we say, Ya Ali Madad, right? The first time I heard this expression, I was like taken back. I was like, what is this? Why is this person saying this? Right? Because we grew up around people that only believed in that, Iyaka na'budu wa iyaka nasta'in. But we know for a fact, because the awliyaullah, the people that have reached that gnosis, that ma'rifah, right? Who do they do the zikr of? They do the zikr of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. They consistently do the zikr of Hazrat Ali, because they know Hazrat Ali is the king of the awliyaullah. He is the king of the friends of Allah. He is the leader of the friends of Allah. Right? If you want to come on the Ruhani path, if you want to come on any kind of spiritual path, Sufism in Islam, then you have to accept that Hazrat Ali is the one by whom he is the one that stamps that this person is a wali and this person isn't. He is the one that lets you on this path. Now I'll give you this example. Why do people, okay, first I'll give you the hawalid that we have from the hadith. So when anybody tells you, why are you saying this? Right? That you can just give, first of all, if somebody is asking you this, most of the time they already have an answer. They're never gonna, it doesn't matter how many proofs you give them, they will never accept that thing from them, most of the time. So there's no point of arguing. It's just to argue, it's just a debate. Unless there's some kind of thing that he says, okay, if I bring these proofs to you, will you accept this thing? That's a different thing. But this is something that most of the time is better just not to argue. Right? And we'll go into why that is later. So he says, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. No, first of all, Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he says in a hadith, he says, if any of you, if your animal escapes into the desert, into a land where there is no one, let him cry out, Ya ibadallah ihbisu alayya. O servants of Allah, detain it for me. Right? That Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling us that if your camel or if your ride or whatever goes away in the desert and there's no one there, so he says, cry out and say, Ya ibadallah ihbisu alayya. That, O servants of Allah, detain it for me. For he says there are people among the servants of Allah that are on the earth that will detain your ride for you. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is telling us that there are those people that when you cry out, but remember this very important thing, that person that is helping you is only doing so by the means given to him by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That you have to understand that bestowal is there. That Allah is the one that's bestowing that thing upon that person. Right? For example, if anybody wants, and here's the other thing we have to understand, that if anybody wants for example, if one of you wants any water, and there is a little kid here that's playing or doing something, you're most likely not going to ask that little kid, hey, go get me some water. He'll probably drop the glass, you won't be able to reach the counter, there's so many things. You'll ask somebody that's capable of that thing, right? So when we ask Hazrat Ali for help, we do so based on the words of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And what is that? Man kuntu Maula fahada aliyun Maula. That whoever I am the Maula of, then know that Ali is his Maula too. And this is something that everyone accepts. Every wali, every person on the path accepts. Right? And to understand this thing, you have to, when you go to the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, the end of Surah Baqarah, wa'fu anna, waghfir lana, warhamna, anta maulana. That Allah, you are the Mawla. You are our helper. right? This is one of the meanings of Maula, right? And then in Surah Tahrim, in verse number 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ هُوَ مَوْلَاهُ, that surely Allah is the one who is the friend and helper. وَجِبْرِيلُ, and Jibreel is his helper. وَصَالِحُ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ, sorry. And the most pious believers, the righteous people among the believers, they are your helpers. Right? So now it's, okay, now who am I supposed to go to for help? Right? Because we often think of help, like I gave the example of the water, right? That's a Zahiri thing. Right? But what is Hazrat Ali the Master? Hazrat Ali, yeah, he can help in Zahiri too. But where is the thing that we need to focus on? It's not on the Zahiri, it's on the Ruhani, it's on the spiritual. For that thing, you have to accept that thing from Hazrat Ali. You have to accept that Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he put this thing where? With Hazrat Ali. With Maula Ali karamallahu wajhul kareem. That he has this, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him the capacity to do this. That this is nowhere, you're not getting this from anywhere else. You know, there's a beautiful thing. I asked someone, I said, what do you have to say about Hazrat Ali? Right? He says, I don't know much, but I know this much, that whenever you need help, you call out to Ali. That if this is your aqidah, right? And if this is the aqidah of your children, then know they're going the right way. That you should know where the help is coming from. That you should know where to call out to when you need any help. Because there are things more that we'll need help in. And it is those people that call out today. Remember I gave the example of the people that, everyone's getting food, their du'as are being accepted, then what's the point? Because tomorrow when everyone is saying Ali, Ali, you'll be from those people that were saying it today, Ali, Ali. Not knowing what was forward. You couldn't see these things. Everyone else is saying, why are you saying this? Tomorrow you will be from those people that said it, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala remembers this thing. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala doesn't let this thing go. That you will be from amongst those people. Because this is an approved way from Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. When they say, why are you asking for help from someone else? You say, this is the sunnah of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Where he gave a blind sahabi came to him. And there's a dua, and everyone knows this dua. And he says, Allahumma inni as'aluka wa atawajjahu ilayka bi nabiyyika ya Muhammad nabi rahmati ya Rasulullah. Right? Inni qad tawajjahtu ila rabbi fi hajati hadi lituqda li Allahumma fashaffi'u fi. So he says, so he uses Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's own name in this. That ya Muhammad. That this is in the dua itself. So Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam himself is giving this dua to the Sahaba Ikram. So how can this be anything outside of Iyaka na'budu wa Iyaka nasta'in? That if you want to know the tafsir of that, that's going to be in the words of Nabi Kareem sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Right? So what's the reason for this thing? The reason for this thing, it goes back to that nifaq. The reason that people don't accept this thing, and I'll give you this example. This is the example that we were taught. This is the example of purity. That one time there was a murshid. He was sleeping, and I think it might have been the murshid of Junaid al-Baghdadi. I'm not sure. But he was sleeping and he woke up and he told his student, he told his murid, he said, I was given the example of purity in my dream. Okay? I was given the example of purity in my dream. So he says, but from Allah, should I share it with you? He said, yes, please share it with me. So he said, this is the example of purity, that there are 10,000 people, right? And from those 10,000 people, 9,000 people get lost in the dunya. Okay, now remember, 9,000 people get lost in the dunya. Okay, now how many people are left? 1,000. From those 1,000, 900 people get lost in the pursuit of Jannah. Okay, now how many people are left? 100 people from that 10,000. Now from that 100, 90 people, they, from the difficulties on the path, they say it's too hard for us, we can't do it. And from those 90, there are 10. Those 10 are exclusively for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And why do I share this with you? Because the people that say Ali, Ali, that was Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala specially chose you for that thing. He put that purity there. that this is a big blessing that we get to come here every month. And even if all you did was Ali, Ali, even if all you did was, okay, I love, for the sake of the love of Hazrat Ali, right? This is something that people don't understand today. That if you want Allah to love you, right? If you want Nabi Pak sallallahu alayhi wa sallam to love you, you have to have the love of the Ahlul Bayt there. There has to be that love of Hazrat Ali there. And it's a big chain, and you can't surpass this chain. You can't just go directly to Allah. Right? You can't go directly to Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself didn't make his system this way. Right? Whether it's Zahiri or in Ruhaniyat, in anything. Right? How were we given the knowledge that comes from Allah? We were given it through K.A.W. Who was the K.A.W. given to? Certain people, selected messengers. So this is that thing that today, if you have that blessing of coming here and going and saying Hazrat and saying Ali, Ali, this is a big blessing from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. It cannot be that you want to say Ya Ali Madad and you don't say it. How is that? Because it doesn't mean there's something wrong here. It means there's something wrong here. It means there's something wrong here, and that shows what that person is. The awliya of the past, they would mention the name of Hazrat Ali in their mehfils, and they would look around the crowd, and they would see from their faces the people that they had some kind of thing on their face. They would know from their face, okay, this person has some problems in his heart. And those people, they wouldn't select for their other exclusive mehfils. So when you come to this mehfil, know that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has put something there. So don't take that thing for granted. Right? Whether you understand it or not. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us this tawfiq and fahm. Because one of the, we say he's the master of wilayat, right? What's the whole purpose of wilayat? The whole purpose of wilayat is to become friends with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How are you going to do that? By knowing who is making you friends, what that nisbat is, that chain of command. Once you know that chain of command and your person that you're attached to is attached to that chain of command, know that is where all that purity comes from. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala make us of those that truly understand what it means to be on the path. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive us.